All right, so welcome to another deep dive, and today
Yeah.
we're going to be looking at construction,
Mm-hmm.
but more specifically, we're going to be kind of looking at the financial side of it.
Right.
So we're talking about general contractors in the U.S.
Okay.
and how much they earn across the country.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
we found this really interesting blog post
Okay.
called, aptly titled, Salaries of General Contractors in the United States.
All right.
And it's got some really interesting findings in it.
Okay.
So we're going to kind of break
We're
down,
diving deep.
dive deep into it.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Cool.
some of the things we found were pretty surprising.
Okay.
So one of the first things that really kind of stood out to me
Yeah.
was that there's a real big difference between like independent contractors and then people who work for a firm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like that seems to be one of the biggest things that kind of affects your earning potential as a general contractor,
Yeah, for sure.
is whether you decide to work for yourself or work for someone else.
I think, it's almost like if you think about any other industry, right?
Yeah.
You've got people that are like individual consultants or,
Right.
running their own shop.
Yeah.
And they have the potential to,
To make way more.
yeah, make a lot more, but
Yeah.
there's a lot more risk involved too.
Way more risk, yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of like that age-old question,
Oh,
like, do you
wow.
want to work for yourself
Yeah.
or for someone else?
Yep,
And I guess it depends on your risk tolerance and
for sure.
and how much you want to potentially earn.
Absolutely. And, I think that leads into something else that the blog post highlighted, which was experience.
Right.
So it's not just enough to like have your own business.
Yeah.
It's also about having the experience and the know-how to really run that business successfully.
Because I think that's where the reputation comes in, right?
Yeah.
If you have more experience, you have a better reputation, so you can charge more because people trust you more.
And you can probably handle bigger, more complex projects too,
Right. Yeah.
which are typically going to be more profitable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, if you were hiring a contractor,
Yeah.
would you go with someone who's brand new or someone who's got, 20 years of experience?
Yeah. I mean, just for peace of mind,
Right, exactly.
you want to go with someone who's got the experience.
Yeah, totally.
But then that also leads into location, which
Right.
is another big thing. Yeah.
Huge, huge.
Like the blog post really highlights that where you work
Mm-hmm.
is a massive impact on your income.
Yeah, so tell me, like, why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I guess the first thing is like cost of living, right?
Right.
Like if you live in California,
Yeah.
New York,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have
Higher expenses.
higher expenses, so they're going to be charging more.
Right.
So,
But it's not just about keeping up with the expenses, right?
Yeah.
It's also about demand.
oh,
Right. So if there's like a construction boom happening in a particular state,
okay.
those contractors, they can really kind of charge what they want because there's so much work and not enough people to do it.
Right, so it's classic supply and demand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Supply and demand.
If there are fewer contractors and more demand, then the prices go up.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was interesting, too, because the blog post does break it down state by state.
Yeah, it does.
And they actually list, like,
It's pretty cool.
some of the states that have the highest average incomes and some of the states that have the lowest.
Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening, some of the differences.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, they mentioned, like, California, Connecticut, Massachusetts,
Mhm.
New Jersey, New York. Those are all kind of like the higher average and higher top-end
Yeah.
incomes.
They tend to have like, strong economies, large populations,
Right.
and lots of construction projects going on.
So I guess that makes sense, right?
It does. Yeah.
But then on the other side, you've got, like, Mississippi, South Dakota, West Virginia.
Yeah, at the lower end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and they're all kind of like the lower end.
Yeah.
So I guess that's something to think about, too.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Location is key.
If you're going to be
Yeah.
a general contractor,
Yeah.
you might want to think about where you want to live.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier specialization,
Yes.
which the blog post does touch on, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of curious about that.
Yeah.
Like, how does that really kind of affect...
Well, that's where it gets really interesting,
Okay.
right? So think about it. If you specialize in like high-end residential
Correct.
or, massive commercial buildings, you're going to be dealing with much bigger budgets.
Right?
And so you can generally command higher fees.
Because I guess the stakes are higher?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The stakes are higher. There's probably more complexity.
Right. So it's not just like you're building a house. You're building like a very fancy house.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
you're building like a skyscraper.
Or a skyscraper. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
okay.
So the clients are going to be much more willing to pay a premium for that expertise.
Right.
right?
Oh.
Because they really want to make sure it's done right.
Yeah. Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
we were talking about, the state-by-state data
And
and
a different income.
yeah, let's actually like dive into that a
Okay.
little bit because
Yeah.
it's pretty fascinating to actually see the range.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So California, like we talked about,
Yeah.
they're at the top.
Yeah.
The average hourly rate is something like $35 an hour,
Okay.
which is pretty good.
Yeah. And then it goes all the way up to $50 at the top end.
Yeah, for the top earners.
Yeah. So that's,
Pretty big range.
yeah, that's pretty substantial.
It is.
But then, you have to keep in mind that California has a high cost of living.
Right,
out.
exactly. So, those higher salaries might be offset by higher expenses.
Right. Yeah.
Got to factor that in.
Yeah.
And then there are other states that are up there too.
Yeah. Like Connecticut, you mentioned Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York,
Yeah. They're all kind of like the
all up there.
the higher earners.
Yeah. And, I think it's interesting because they all tend to have like, strong economies,
Right.
larger populations, and they always have these new construction projects going on.
Mhm.
So it kind of makes sense
Yeah.
why they're at the higher end.
Yeah. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have states like Mississippi, South Dakota,
Yeah.
West Virginia.
Yeah, those are the ones that kind of have the lowest average hourly rates.
Right. Yeah.
And, they're ranging from like $24 to $25 an hour, which is quite a bit lower than, the $35 we were talking about.
Yeah. That's significant.
It is.
Yeah.
So why do you think there's such a big difference there?
Well, you know, it's probably a combination of factors,
Okay.
right? Cost of living is probably lower in those states,
Yeah.
which means salaries in general are
Right.
probably going to be lower.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's probably just less demand for, like, the big construction projects
Yeah.
compared to, like, a state with a booming economy.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
So,
Yeah. So I guess the overall takeaway is that, to be a general contractor,
yeah,
there's like a bunch of different things that,
it's multifaceted
yeah.
for sure.
And it's not just like, being good at construction. It's
Ah.
also like, kind of understanding the market.
Understanding the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being a savvy business
Or
person.
being a savvy business person.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So if you were a general contractor, like just starting out
Mm-hmm.
and knowing all this, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think, first and foremost, I would say like really think about your goals,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to like run your own business and
Mhm.
have that potential for like really high earnings?
Yeah.
Or are you more comfortable like working for a company,
Mhm.
maybe having like a stable salary?
Right. A little less risk.
Yeah, a little less risk.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to consider.
Yeah, because there's no right or wrong answer.
Totally.
It really depends on, like, your personality, I guess.
Yeah, and like how much risk you're willing to take on.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then the other thing I would say is, think about location,
Right.
right? Are you willing to like relocate to
Mhm.
a state that might have like a higher earning potential?
Right.
Or are you kind of tied to a specific region?
Yeah.
For personal reasons or family reasons. Those are things to think about early on.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, we were talking about specialization earlier.
Mhm.
Think about like what type of construction work really interests you?
Yeah, like, what do you want to specialize in?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Mhm.
do you want to do, like high-end residential
Yeah.
commercial,
Yeah.
or maybe something completely different, like
Yeah.
historical restoration?
Yeah, something really niche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are all like really important things to think about,
Yeah.
kind of early on in your career
Mhm.
because, making like strategic choices
Right,
about
yeah.
all these things
Right.
can really impact,
Your earning potential.
your earning potential
Yeah.
big time.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, so far, I think this has been a really interesting,
Yeah,
kind of like eye-opening deep dive.
for sure.
We've learned that, location matters, experience matters, specialization.
Mhm. And even like, the choice of working independently versus working for a company.
Yeah, whether you're an independent contractor
Yeah,
or you work for someone else.
totally.
And
Yeah.
what about, like, for you listening right now, what kind of stands out to you?
You know what I think is really interesting?
Yeah.
Is that all this information can actually be useful not just for someone starting out,
Oh, okay.
but also for like established
Oh,
contractors
interesting.
who are looking for like, new opportunities.
Oh, okay. So how could they use it?
Well, let's talk about that in part two.
Okay.
Well, let's say you're like a contractor in a state that has like lower average earnings.
Mm-hmm.
This data might like kind of encourage you to maybe think outside the box a little bit,
I see. Right.
Like maybe expand your services to a neighboring state
Okay.
that has a higher demand for construction.
So like think regionally
Yeah, exactly.
instead of just like in your little.
Don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Or maybe, specialize in a niche area of construction that could like command higher fees,
Okay.
because it requires like very specific skills.
All right, so like what kind of things are we thinking about there?
Well, I mean, there are a ton of different options.
No.
But, off the top of my head, like historical restoration,
Oh, yeah.
that's something that
Very
requires
specific, yeah.
very specialized knowledge and skills
Yeah.
that not every contractor has.
Right. Yeah.
So if you have that expertise, you're going to be in high demand.
Yeah, it's like a very niche.
Totally.
Yeah, like very niche
Very
thing.
niche, yeah.
Okay, so what about like other areas where specializing could really pay off?
Well, green building and sustainable construction are becoming increasingly popular.
Right.
A lot of people are looking for contractors who, really understand eco-friendly materials
Right.
and building practices.
Yeah.
So, if you can kind of position yourself as an expert in that area, you're going to be, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, for sure.
And probably be able to command,
A higher rate.
higher rates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I mean that makes a lot of sense, especially with like how everything's moving towards sustainability these days.
Totally. Yeah.
It's a big thing.
It's a hot topic.
Yeah. What about something like high-end kitchen and bathroom renovations?
Yeah, that's another good one.
Because I feel like people spend a lot of money on those spaces.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People are willing to invest a lot
Yeah.
in those areas of their homes.
And they want it to look good.
They want it to look good.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I guess the takeaway here is that, specialization,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a real game changer.
Big time.
Yeah.
It's like finding your niche,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like where you can really excel and stand out
Yeah.
from the competition.
Okay. Okay, so now I know some people might be thinking like, okay, all this is good, but like I'm not a contractor.
Right,
Like, how is this even relevant to me?
right.
What would you say to them?
I would say that even if you're not directly involved in construction,
Yeah.
this information can still be valuable.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say you're thinking about like buying a house
Mm-hmm.
or maybe renovating your current home.
Right.
Understanding how contractor salaries work
Right.
can help you make, more informed decisions.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So it helps you understand like the quotes you're getting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like, why is this contractor charging this much?
Right. Yeah.
And this contractor charging this much?
Right.
You can kind of start to understand those differences.
Okay. So it's like, even if you're not in the industry,
Yeah.
it's still useful to know.
It's still helpful to
Yeah.
have like that kind of background knowledge.
Yeah. Okay.
I think so, at least.
So it gives you like a better appreciation for like what goes into it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about like location and experience,
Mm,
but I kind of want to circle back to specialization.
yeah.
Can you give us some examples, like from the real world,
Sure.
of how specializing in a specific area can actually like increase your earning potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on a few already, but one that comes to mind is like historical restoration.
Yeah.
That requires a very specific set of skills
So,
and knowledge.
You have to be very careful.
You have to be very
Yeah.
careful.
Yeah.
And not every contractor can do that.
Right.
So if you have that expertise, you're going to be in very high demand.
Yeah.
And you can definitely charge a premium for your services.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's just one example.
Okay.
But there are many others.
Okay.
We were talking about green building earlier.
Yeah.
That's another area where, like,
Specialization is key.
specialization is key. And, you can really make a good living doing that kind of work.
All right. So it sounds like, I mean, you don't necessarily have to be
Right.
in like a big city
No, not at all.
or anything like that to be successful.
Nope. You
Oh.
just have to find, like, the right niche
A right niche, yeah.
and the right market.
Okay. Perfect. So now I want to kind of touch on something that we mentioned earlier, and the blog post really kind of hammered this home too, which was, the difference between independent contractors and then people who work for a firm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it seems like that's like a big decision that can...
It's a big decision.
Yeah.
It really is.
But I guess there are, like, pros and cons to both.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, like, what are some of the things that people should be thinking about?
Well, being an independent contractor definitely gives you more control over your income,
Okay.
but it also comes with more responsibility.
Right.
You're essentially like running your own business,
Right.
which means you're responsible for like finding clients, managing projects,
Yeah.
handling all the administrative stuff
Yeah.
that comes with being,
Your own boss.
own boss. Yeah.
So it's like that trade-off
Exactly.
of like more freedom, more earning potential,
Mm-hmm.
but way more risk.
Way more risk.
And headaches, probably.
And headaches, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For some people, that's like the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
They love that,
Yeah, they thrive in that.
They thrive in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
But, for others, maybe the stability and predictability of
Yeah.
working for a firm
Right.
is a better fit.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's no right or wrong answer.
It depends on you.
It depends on you, yeah, your
Yeah.
personality and, your goals.
Okay.
Right.
And I guess, too, like, you can start at a firm and maybe later on
Totally. Yeah,
you can kind of go out on your own.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then you have the experience from working at the firm.
And you've built up like connections and a network.
Right.
Okay.
So this has been, just this part of our conversation has been really fascinating.
It has.
I feel like we've learned so much already.
Oh, sure.
So for you listening, what do you think is like the most important takeaway from all of this?
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that knowledge is power.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Can you kind of like elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So like by understanding, how contractor salaries work,
Yeah.
you can make better decisions about your career.
Right.
Whether you're just starting out
Yeah.
or maybe you're thinking about like a career change.
Yeah.
Or even if you're like an established contractor
Right.
who's just looking to, kind of take your business to the
Yeah.
next level.
Okay. So it's about being like proactive.
Proactive, yeah.
Informed.
Yeah, instead of just kind of like,
Just waiting for things to happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're kind of like taking control. You're taking control of your own destiny.
Yeah,
Exactly. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably move on to part 3.
Let's do it.
All right. All right. So if someone's out there and they're thinking, hey, I want to be a general contractor,
Yeah.
what advice, like what final parting words of advice would you give them?
I think the most important thing is like to be passionate about construction.
Okay.
It's not an easy field.
Right.
And it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's definitely not a desk job.
No, not at all.
Got to get your hands dirty
Yeah, you got to be willing to like,
to work.
work hard, get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
But if you genuinely enjoy the work,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be much more likely to succeed.
Right. Yeah. If you enjoy it, it makes it a lot easier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about like, the technical skills. You also have to be like a good communicator,
Okay.
a problem solver,
Right.
a business person.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. It's
It's not just,
You're interacting with clients, managing budgets,
right.
making sure projects stay on track.
So what would you say to someone who, they're thinking about it?
Yeah.
How can they kind of like, I don't know, get started or maybe...
Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid to, like, ask for help along the way.
Okay.
Find mentors, network with other contractors.
Okay.
Take advantage of resources that are available to you. There are a lot of great organizations and online communities that can, like, provide support and guidance.
Yeah, I guess that's the good thing now is
Yeah.
that there's like so much information online.
Oh,
So
totally.
you can really like learn
Yeah, you can learn so much
pretty much anything.
just
though.
by, going online and doing some research.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I guess like never stop learning, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the industry's always changing, so
Always changing, yeah.
you kind of have to stay on top of it.
Yeah, stay up to date on the latest trends, technologies, building practices.
Right.
That's going to make you more valuable to clients.
Right.
And give you like a competitive edge.
Okay, and I guess like don't be afraid to, kind of find your own path.
Exactly. You don't
Right.
have to fit into like a specific mold
Yeah.
Find what you're good at and what you enjoy.
Right.
And then, kind of build your career around that.
Yeah.
Maybe you specialize in a particular type of construction, or maybe you focus on a specific geographic area.
Mm-hmm.
The possibilities are kind of endless.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the importance of, like, building relationships.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, networking is so important in this industry. Get to know other contractors, architects, designers, suppliers.
Okay.
Like anyone who can help you, grow your business.
Right.
And learn from their experience.
Yeah. So kind of like find your community and...
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so if there's someone out there who's like really thinking about, hey, I want to be a general contractor,
Mm-hmm.
what would you leave them with?
I would say it's a challenging but rewarding path.
Okay.
It's a chance to really build something tangible.
Yeah.
To create spaces that people are going to live and work in for years to come.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And, the data we've talked about today is just a starting point.
Right.
It's a tool
Mm-hmm.
to help you, make informed decisions.
That's for sure.
But ultimately, your success is going to come down to your hard work, your dedication, and your passion for the craft.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I think that about wraps it up for this deep dive
I think so.
into the world of general contractors and their salaries.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot about the factors that influence income, the importance of specialization, and the different paths you can take in this field.
Absolutely.
So for anyone out there who's thinking about picking up a hammer and building their dream career, we encourage you to do your research, explore your options, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, well, we'll catch you on our next deep dive.
Sounds good.